Welcome to Staffworks Explained. In this video, we talk about Usahihi Expressway, the billion-dollar highway which is caught between Kenya's infrastructure appetite, global power politics, and a PPP system which is now constrained. For more than half a century, the Nairobi Mombasa highway has been Kenya's most important road. It is the corridor that feeds the country's economy. Every day, thousands of trucks move various types of goods, be it food, cement, electronics, containerized cargo from the Port of Mombasa toward Nairobi and beyond to countries such as Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan, and even Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. Tourist buses heading to the coast use this corridor. Exporters rely on it. Oil marketers depend on it. Manufacturers cannot function without this corridor. Yet, despite its importance, the highway has become increasingly strained under constraints of modern trade volumes. Sections of the road or corridor now experience chronic congestion, high accident rates, heavy freight deterioration, unpredictable travel times, and even rising logistical cost. Long-distance trucks queue stretching for kilometers have become normal. Cargo transport delays directly affect fuel prices, commodity cost, and industrial productivity across the region. Successive governments have acknowledged the problem for years, but every major attempt to redesign or modernize the corridor has collided with the same obstacles: financing, politics, procurement, complexity, and even execution risk. Now comes the Usahihi Nairobi Mombasa Expressway, a proposed 413 billion Kenya shillings mega projects backed by Everstrong capital that could either become one of the most transformative transport investment in East Africa history or another case study of how ambitious infrastructure visions become trapped inside Kenya's procurement and government battles. The latest developments surrounding the project have exposed something much more deeper than legal dispute over a feasibility report. They have exposed the tensions inside Kenya infrastructure model: who controls mega projects, who finances them, who carries the risk, and who ultimately profits from these mega projects. Why Kenya needs a new Nairobi-Mombasa corridor. The original road corridor was never designed for the scale of trade it now handles. When major sections were developed and upgraded decades ago, freight volumes, vehicle ownership, and regional trade integration was significantly slower. Today, the corridor carries economic pressure far beyond what planners anticipated. The port itself has expanded dramatically over the years, handling millions of tons of cargo annually. Kenya's role as a regional logistics hub has grown much bigger, with the Northern Corridor Integration Framework linking the East African economies. The result is predictable. The road is now overstretched. Heavy trucks damage pavement structure faster than maintenance cycles can keep. Urban growth ground around towns along the corridor creates traffic bottlenecks. Passenger and freight traffic compete for limited carriage space. Road safety deteriorates. The Nairobi Expressway partially solved congestions inside Nairobi itself, but it did not solve the larger structural problem between the two cities. That larger problem has remained unresolved for years. There was an earlier plan, Bechtel plan, and why did it fail? Before Everstrong Capital entered the picture, one of the most significant proposals came from the American engineering giant Bechtel. Bechtel proposal emerged during the Uhuru Kenyatta administration as part of a broader US-Kenya infrastructure cooperation discussion. The project envisions a dual carriageway expansion and modernization program between the two cities. Unlike the later Everstrong model, Bechtel discussions were largely expected to rely on sovereign-backed financing arrangements involving export credit support from the United States. At that time, the proposal gained geopolitical significance because it was widely viewed as part of Washington's attempts to counter China's growing influence over African infrastructure financing. China had already financed the SGR, major highways, port-linked infrastructure, and multiple energy developments in Kenya. United States wanted a larger infrastructure footprint in East Africa, but the Bechtel proposal encountered major obstacles. There was rising debt concerns. By then, Kenya's debt had become politically sensitive after years of aggressive infrastructure borrowing. Questions over long-term repayment sustainability for projects such as SGR had intensified public scrutiny around externally financed mega projects. Taking on another massive sovereign-backed highway became politically difficult. Then there was commercial viability question. There were concerns over projected toll affordability, traffic assumptions, repayment model, and whether the project would generate sufficient returns without exposing taxpayers to future liabilities. There are also political transition risk. Mega projects in Kenya are vulnerable to changing political priorities. As leadership transitions approached and fiscal policy shifted toward reducing sovereign borrowing, the proposal gradually lost momentum. It never progressed into full implementation. Then enters Everstrong Capital and the PIIP, or Privately Initiated Proposal Model. The Usahihi proposal emerged during the President William Ruto push for alternative infrastructure financing model that would reduce direct constraint on public debt. This is where the project became technically and politically significant. Rather than waiting for government tendering, Everstrong Capital pursued the project under the Kenya's public-private partnership framework using the Privately Initiated Investment Proposal, commonly known as PIIP. Under the PIIP, a private developer originates and submits project proposal independently before the formal government procurement begins. In theory, PIIP encourage innovation and private capital mobilization. In reality, they are among the most controversial infrastructure procurement mechanism globally because they create constant tension between private initiative, transparency, competitive procurement, and state oversight. Supporters argue that the governments facing physical pressure need private sector innovation to unlock infrastructure financing. Critics argue that such proposals can become opaque pathways that weaken open competition and accountability if not tightly managed. The Usahihi proposal quickly became one of the most ambitious PIIP Kenya has ever received. What the Everstrong proposal contained. The proposal was not simply a road expansion plan. It was presented as a full economic corridor modernization. According to the submitted feasibility document and public statements, the project proposed 4 to 6 lane expressway built to international toll road standards, connecting Nairobi and Mombasa under the long-term PPP concession structure, financed privately without direct sovereign borrowing. The structure reportedly included international infrastructure financing, local investor participation, institutional capital, toll revenue recovery systems, and local contractor participation, as well as digital traffic management system. Everstrong also emphasized on road safety improvement, reduced logistics cost, faster cargo movement, local job creation, climate conscious infrastructures, and regional trade integration. The company framed the project as a model for US-Kenya infrastructure cooperation and private capital mobilization in Africa. That geopolitical framing mattered. The project increasingly became viewed as part of the broader Western effort to offer alternative to Chinese state-backed infrastructure financing across Africa. Then there was a Mota-Engil factor and why its withdrawal changed everything. One of the least publicly understood but most critical development in the project was the involvement and later withdrawal of a Portuguese infrastructure giant, Mota-Engil. Mota-Engil was expected to provide major engineering and technical support within the broader consortium structure. The company has extensive experience in toll road construction, Africa transport infrastructure, PPP concession, and large-scale engineering delivery. Its involvement gave the proposal technical credibility. In mega PPP projects, the government and financiers rarely assess only the lead developer. They evaluate the entire consortium ecosystem. engineering capacity, financial strength, concession management experience, operational expertise, and risk-bearing capacity. Mota-Engil strengthened those areas, but reports later indicated that the company withdrew from the consortium during the project development phase. That withdrawal appears to have become one of the most serious blows to the project's credibility. Why? Because once a major technical partner exits, regulatory and financiers immediately begin asking difficult questions. Who now carries the construction risk? Who guarantees technical delivery? Who reassures the lenders? Can the revised consortium still achieve financial close? Does the replacement structure still meet capacity requirement? According to reports linked to the PPP review process, Everstrong later introduced alternative contractors after Mota-Engil departure, but concerns reportedly emerged regarding whether the revised consortium structure still met technical and financial expectations. There was also geopolitical layer to the issue. The company, Mota-Engil itself, has shareholders links involving China Communication Construction Company (CCCC), a major Chinese state-linked infrastructure company that became politically sensitive because the Usahihi project had increasingly been framed as a Western-backed alternative to Chinese infrastructure financing model. The contradiction became difficult. A project marketed as particularly or partly a symbol of US-Kenya infrastructure cooperation now involved a contractor with strong Chinese shareholder connection. That geopolitical complication may have contributed, although it's speculative, to internal discomfort within parts of financing and evaluation ecosystems surrounding the project. From a project governance perspective, however, Mota-Engil withdrawal damaged three critical pillars: technical confidence, financial confidence, and as well as consortium stability. And once confidence weakens in a mega PPP project, institutional resistance grows very quickly. Why? Now, why the PPP Directorate rejected the project? The PPP Directorate and evaluation authorities reportedly raised concerns over the aspects of feasibility assessment and project structure. While full confidential evaluation details were not publicly disclosed comprehensively, several issues emerged through reporting and legal filings. There were procedural compliance concerns, project structuring questions, consortium changes, procurement governance issues, and broader feasibility evaluation concerns. From a project management perspective, the issue was likely not whether Kenya needs the road. The issue was whether the proposal met institutional, legal, technical, and financial thresholds required for a project of this magnitude. Large toll roads PPP are extraordinarily sensitive to weak assumptions. A flawed traffic forecast alone can destabilize an entire concession. If toll revenues underperform, debt servicing suffers. Refinancing becomes difficult. Concession disputes emerge, and governments eventually face pressure to intervene politically or financially. The Directorate appears to have adopted a cautious approach. Why Everstrong went to the PPP Petitions Committee? After the rejection, Everstrong escalated the matter to the PPP Petitions Committee, Kenya's specialized dispute resolution mechanism for PPP procurement dispute. The company argued that the evaluation lacked fairness, procedural clarity was insufficient, investment treatment concerns existed, and uncertainty surrounding privately initiated proposals was growing. That was not just a complaint about one road. Everstrong was effectively warning that Kenya risks discouraging major infrastructure investors if PPP processes appear inconsistent and unpredictable. That is a serious concern in global infrastructure finance. Investors financing multi-billion-dollar projects evaluate legal stability, procurement predictability, regulatory consistency, as well as institutional reliability. Weakness in any of these raises financing cost significantly. So what happened at the tribunal? The PPP Petitions Committee reviewed the submissions from Everstrong Capital and government-linked PPP institutions. The proceedings focused on whether the procedures or the procurement procedures were properly followed, whether Everstrong rights were violated, and whether the evaluation process complied with the PPP law. and whether the directorate acted within the legal and administrative authority. In the end, the committee declined to uphold Everstrong's petition. That meant that the directorate position effectively remained in force. The committee reportedly did not find sufficient grounds to overturn the evaluation outcome. Legally, that represented a major setback for the project. Commercially, however, the matter may still remain open. Now, why Everstrong says the decision was unfair? Everstrong's response after the ruling was unusually forceful. The company argued that major legal and procedural questions remained unresolved. Uncertainty still surrounds the treatment of privately initiated proposals and the process, increasing financial risk for long-term private capital. The company further stated that delays increase transition cost, investors' uncertainty raises financing cost, and infrastructure ultimately becomes more expensive for Kenya. One particular important statement from Everstrong was this: the company argued the matter should not be reduced to the dispute about subcontractors, co-developers, or procedural disagreement, but should instead focus on Kenya's ability to mobilize private capital for urgently needed infrastructure. That statement appeared aimed partly at redirecting attention away from the controversies around the consortium composition after the Mota-Engil withdrawal. Critics, however, argue the opposite, that transparency around consortium structure is central to accountability for mega project PPPs. Does Everstrong still have a chance? Yes, but the path forward is now far more uncertain. Several scenarios remain possible. One, renegotiation and resubmission. The government and Everstrong could still negotiate revised terms involving consortium restructuring, financial adjustment, phased implementation, or revised risk allocation mechanism. This is common in complex PPP infrastructure projects globally. Two, competitive international tender. The government could abandon the PIIP pathway and open the project to wider international competition. That could reduce procurement controversy, but wider delay implementation significant. Three, government-led alternative financing. Kenya could pursue sovereign borrowing, multilateral development financing, phased public upgrades, or hybrid financing structure, but current physical constraint makes these politically difficult. 4. Corridor segmentation. Rather than constructing the full expressway immediately, the government could prioritize the most congested sections first through phased corridor expansion. From a project management perspective, this may actually be the most financially realistic option. Now the bigger risk Kenya faces. The greatest danger now may not be losing one project. It may be damaging confidence in Kenya's PPP environment itself. Kenya still needs urgently highways, logistics, infrastructure, ports, urban transit systems, water projects, and even energy networks. If investors begin perceiving Kenya's PPP system as unpredictable or politically vulnerable, financing costs for future infrastructure projects could rise sharply. Usahihi dispute therefore carries implications far beyond one highway. It is becoming a test of whether Kenya can successfully transition into a new era of privately financed mega project delivery after years of debt-driven infrastructure expansion. And now, conclusion. Usahihi Nairobi Mombasa Expressway represents both Kenya infrastructure appetite and its institutional contradictions. The economic case for a modern corridor is undeniable. Logistic constraints is real. The trade argument is overwhelming. But mega projects do not succeed because of ambition alone. They succeed through procurement credibility, institutional trust, financing discipline, legal clarity, transparent governance, and realistic execution planning. Everstrong proposal arrived at a moment when Kenya desperately needs infrastructure but can no longer comfortably finance massive projects through traditional sovereign borrowing. That made the project attractive, but it also made it politically, commercially, and institutionally fragile. Today, the Usahihi Expressway exists somewhere between vision and uncertainty, too important to ignore, too expensive to rush, and too complicated to mishandle. Whether it eventually becomes transformative regional corridor or another stalled infrastructure dream may depend less on engineering than whether Kenya can finally solve the governance, financing, as well as institutional problems that continue haunting its largest project. So thank you for reaching this far. If it's your first time here, please consider subscribing to this channel. You can also hit the notification bell so that whenever you upload a new video, you are notified. You can leave a comment, like, and even share. So let's meet in the next one. Thank you.